The requires keyword is used to basically execute code whenever something exists. Uh, whenever something exists. So for example, here we have only execute if data variable exists. So what this line of code is doing is that it's only gonna log this output to the console if the data variable exists. So if I run the code and the data variable does not exist, this message will not get printed to the console because it has to find the message. It has to find the variable um, data for this message to be outputted to the console. And on the bottom here, we have another example. Only execute if import keyword is included. So data variable is different from keyword. Keywords are the ones that are defined within Fndlang basically. So if that keyword is included, then the code from the bottom here will get executed. So this means if import is not included, if I write any code after this line, the code on the bottom will not get executed because import is not included basically. So but this line and this one are actually different. That's because if I write anything on the bottom here, it will get executed because it's only going to ignore the line after that requires a statement. So that means this log here will get ignored, but the one on the bottom will not get ignored. So the reason why that is the reason why the code on the bottom will not get ignored is because of this semicolon here. So you can see here the semicolon ends after the log out message is done. So therefore, this requires statement will collect everything starting from after the data that it's trying to look for. After that, it's going to collect everything from there until it finds a semicolon. Now, once it finds that, it's going to stop the reading and it's going to move on with its execution. Therefore, if I log something like hello to the console, this will get printed. But if I go on the bottom here and then I log world, this message will not get printed because import is not included basically. You could include a key by using the keyword include, and then that's gonna work. That's gonna make this code work. But if I save the code, you would notice that the hello is printed, but the world output is not printed. So the reason why the hello is printed is because you could also see we don't get this message printed, my fav number and then data, because the variable data does not exist, so it does not print this output here. But it moves on with the execution because it already has what it should not execute, which is this message here. So if you had a function here, it would do the same thing. It's just that you could put a function here, and that function is only going to get executed on if it meets the expectation, which is the data that you give it inside of this greater than and less than and greater than symbols. And if you have a semicolon after the less than and greater than symbol, that means everything after that line will not get executed if it doesn't meet the expectation basically. So that means if you have like a lot of lines of code on the bottom here, that code will not get executed. It will basically stop after it fails. Of course, it's not going to output any message. I mean, it is going to output a warning. So for example, if we check on these warnings, you can see we have Fndlang warning, data is required for this file to run, and it gives us what line that was. And then over here as well, you can see warning, import is required for this line to run, and that's line 4, which is somewhere here. Oh, right here. It's kind of off with the line numbers. But yeah, you can see it does give you a warning, but it doesn't give you an error warning. It's just like just a warning basically. So yeah, that's basically what you could use the requires key for. There's also another thing you could use it for. Oh yeah, you can also have multiple requires statement. So you could have data and then add a comma and then create add another parameter that you want to check for. So you don't have to you know write this line, write this keyword over and over again, just to check for a certain word, a certain key. So you could have multiple keys instead of that one requires statement by adding a comma basically. So the other thing you do with it is that you can also check and make sure that an identifier exists. Identifiers in Fndlang are used to like create your own code syntax within the language itself. And if you wanted to check if an identifier exists, for example, here I'm going to do only execute if random max value exists. So this is an identifier that is going to check for, and then it's going to do its thing. So for example, I'm going to say requires, and then within this symbols, you have to put a keyword called ident, and then colon. After the colon is where you're going to put the ID of the identifier. In this case, if you wanted to get an ID of this identifier, I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to use log ident. And in this case, I'm going to replace the value with the @ symbol and then curly bracket. And there we go. So if I save this code, it should give me the output, the ID of the identifier. So right here, this is the ID. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to put it right here after this colon marks, just like that. Now, if I save, I'm going to go ahead and log here as well. Random is defined. Did I spell defined? I'm not sure. Random is defined. So I'm going to save that, and then here I'm going to log done. Okay, let's save the code. I'm going to delete this one. We don't want that. So if I reload the page, you will see that we only get this one with this one output, which is the done output, the log that I'm printing. You can see there's two warnings. One of them is the warning of the identifier does not exist. So this is only going to work if the identifier, in this case called some random ID. So this is the random number generator identifier that I'm trying to work with. And you can see that it does not exist. So this message here, random is defined, is not being printed to the console. If you wanted this to work, you would have to like create that identifier yourself or include it. So in this case, I'm going to create it myself just to show you guys how this works. So I'm going to say write and then random, that's the key, and then colon max, and then parenthesis, and then within that parenthesis, it takes a variable, and then that's that. Now, if I save the code and reload the page, you'll notice that we don't get that warning anymore. But if we look at the output, you'll see we have random is defined. So the reason why we're getting this random is defined output right now is because we actually wrote that identifier ourselves, and the requires statement is able to check if that identifier exists because we're given it the ID, which is right here. So if you wanted to get an identifier ID, you have to use the key ident, which is the function that you have to execute, and then it just gives you back the identifier, and you could use it for things like in requires statement or whenever you're trying to include something somewhere else, I guess. So yeah, identifiers are really useful and very powerful as well. So yeah, right now the only reason why this output is being printed is because I actually defined that key. So if I remove it and save it again and reload, if I reload it again, you'll notice that there's nothing, there's no more the random is defined output, there's only the done output. So yeah, that's how you use requires statement. Thanks for watching this. I'll see you guys on the next one. All right.